All right, today we are diving into one of the toughest challenges in medicine, pancreatic cancer. For a long, long time, this disease has been an absolute master of disguise, dodging our best therapies. But now, two incredible new studies are starting to pull back the curtain, and they're showing us not just how this cancer hides, but how we might finally expose it to our body's own immune system. So this is really the million-dollar question, isn't it? We have these amazing immunotherapies that have been total game changers for other cancers, but for pancreatic cancer, they just don't seem to work. It has this uncanny ability to just make itself invisible. So let's start digging in and see if we can crack this case.
Okay, first things first. Before we can even get to the breakthroughs, you really have to appreciate just how clever this cancer is. What exactly makes it such a great escape artist?
Well, think of it like this. Pancreatic cancer basically builds a fortress. It creates this chemical force field around itself to keep our immune cells out. On top of that, it has very few unique markers, so it just blends in with all the healthy tissue around it. And even when it gets damaged, its distress signals are, well, they're basically on mute. But the worst part? The immune system's generals, these critical cells called dendritic cells that are supposed to spot the enemy and sound the alarm, they're almost completely missing in action. So, with those challenges on the table, let's pivot to the first huge breakthrough. And it all revolves around a pretty famous villain in the cancer world, an oncoprotein that scientists just discovered is leading a secret double life. Meet MI. Now, for decades, scientists have known this protein as the gas pedal for cancer. It's what drives that out-of-control growth we see in so many tumors. It's been a top target for a long time. But it turns out that's only half the story. And this is where it gets really fascinating. NYC has two totally separate jobs. Its day job, the one we all knew about, is binding to a cell's DNA to throw tumor growth into overdrive. But researchers just found out it has a secret night job. Inside the chaos of a tumor, when it's under stress, it completely switches tasks. It lets go of the DNA and starts grabbing onto RNA instead, which allows it to go into full-on stealth mode. So here's how it pulls off this magic trick. Under stress, MYC proteins grab onto RNA and start clumping together. These clumps then act like a magnet for a molecular cleanup crew called the exosome. And this crew's sole purpose is to find and destroy the very things, the cell's distress flares, that are supposed to alert the immune system that something is wrong. By destroying the evidence, MYC basically throws an invisibility cloak over the entire tumor.
So if scientists now understand the trick, the next question is pretty obvious, right? Can they stop it? Can they actually rip off that invisibility cloak and finally expose the tumor for what it is?
And here's the absolutely brilliant part. It turns out MyC's growth function and its cloaking function are completely separate. So that allowed researchers to do a kind of molecular surgery. They engineered a new version of the MyC protein that could still do its day job of driving growth, but was totally incapable of carrying out its secret mission of silencing the immune system. And the result? It was incredible. In animal models, tumors with this modified MYC didn't just stop growing. They collapsed, shrinking by a staggering 94%. But here's the kicker. This only happened in animals with a healthy working immune system. That was the smoking gun. It proved that once you take away the tumor's camouflage, our body's own defenses can sweep in and do the job. But unmasking the villain is only half the battle. What happens if you reveal the enemy, but your army is nowhere to be found? And that brings us to the second major breakthrough. This gets us right back to that other massive hurdle we talked about. Pancreatic tumors are notoriously cold. That's a term meaning there are very few immune cells inside them to begin with. So even if you make the tumor totally visible, you still need soldiers on the ground to actually launch an attack. So let's meet the heroes of this second part of the story. They're called type 1 conventional dendritic cells, or CDC1s for short. You can think of these as the elite generals of your immune army. Their job is to find the enemy, gather intelligence, and then go brief the frontline soldiers, the T cells, on exactly who and what to attack. Without them, there's no organized response. And right here, this is the problem. You can see that compared to healthy tissue, pancreatic tumors are almost completely empty of these critical generals. So there's no one there to organize the attack, even if the enemy is standing right there in plain sight. So, a different group of researchers came up with this fantastic strategy. If the generals aren't showing up for the fight,
Why not train them somewhere else and send them in as reinforcements? They created a vaccine using these class CDC1 cells, grown in a lab and preloaded with harmless little pieces of the tumor. This essentially gives the generals a full briefing on what the enemy looks like before they even enter the battlefield. And this, right here, is where everything comes together. When you combine these two completely separate breakthroughs, unmasking the tumor and boosting the immune army, you get a powerful, beautifully coordinated strategy. We're talking about a classic 1-2 punch. The first punch targets MYC to rip off the tumor's invisibility cloak. Then, the second punch is that CDC1 vaccine, which sends in a supercharged, pre-trained army that knows exactly what it's looking for. It's like a perfectly executed pincer movement, but at a cellular level. And the potential benefits here are just profound. This isn't just about fighting the tumor you have today. This combination could finally make these historically resistant tumors vulnerable. It brings in a whole diverse army of T cells for a much broader attack. And maybe most importantly, it seems to create a lasting memory in the immune system so it can stand guard and stop the cancer from ever coming back. Now look, there is still a long road from the lab to the clinic, for sure. But these two discoveries taken together represent a powerful new way of thinking. By understanding exactly how the cancer hides, and by strategically boosting the very forces that are meant to fight it, we're left with a really hopeful question. Could this two-pronged attack be the strategy that finally turns the tide against pancreatic cancer?